I'm Councillor Saya Raza, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's now gone past 7 p.m. and I would like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the committee. My fellow scrutineers, cabinet members and officers of the council and members of the public, whether present with us in House of House or watching the committee eventually on council's YouTube channel. Our agenda today sees us welcome partners and housing associations active in the borough as we look at what happened since our housing association focused scrutiny in the day in May of 2024. We will then consider the council's Transforming Community Experience programme. We also have an important item on the council's Special Educational Needs and Disability Service. In addition, we have several shorter items on our agenda. They are updates from the chairs of this year's scrutiny panel, a review of council's forward plan, a chance to review and revise the committee's own work programme, and any urgent business should there be any. Having walked through the content of today's committee, I'll now take a few moments to set out mechanics of the meeting. As chair, I will run the meeting and invite people to speak, I hope by combining question and observation to allow a fluid discussion. I shall invite in guests to introduce their reports. I will then invite members of the committee to ask questions of our guests. I or Councillor Mia, my vice chair, shall then speak last and then briefly sum up the discussion and advise of any issues or common ground to note. Every member of the committee who wishes to speak will have the opportunity to speak. Please be mindful of your fellow committee members and our guests and ensure your contributions are pertinent and help us framing a meaningful recommendation. Having set out the way in which I will chair the meeting, shall we begin? I would like to start by welcoming Benita Edwards, House's recently appointed Director of Law and Governance and Monitoring Officer, who will be supporting the committee this evening. Welcome, Benita.
Thank you very much, Chair.
For the benefit of our guests and those who may wish by watching us online this evening, would my fellow committee members like to introduce themselves, please?
Councillor Ghazala Bhatt, I'm Councillor for Cranford Board.
Hello, hi, I'm Councillor Samina Nagra. I'm the Councillor for Feltham North Ward.
That's all right, no problem. I'm Jack Emsley. I'm the Councillor for Chiswick Homefields.
Councillor for Brentford West.
I'm Councillor Emma Sidhu and I'm Councillor for Heston West.
Thank you, members. Okay, so we move on to agenda item number 1 here. So this is apologies for absence, declaration of interest and other communications. I did receive an apology from yourself, but yeah, yes, thank you. That's okay, no problem. Thank you so much for being here. I've got two,
Hi, Chair. I received the Councillor Kuldeep Tuck. He will be late. It's a send apology for the lateness here. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So lateness for Councillor Tuck. I haven't received anything for Councillor Foot there. Okay. Any declaration of interest for tonight? No. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to agenda item number 2. We have before us the minutes of our 23rd of January meeting. Does anyone have any issues of accuracy? If not, we can just sign these off. Any issues? No. Thank you so much. Only one thing that I just wanted to ask Councillor Emsley, sweeping. Do you want to add that?
Do I want to add it where?
To the minutes?
I think it's there.
There's something that you brought up.
I think it's there.
Is there? The answer's there?
The answer is not there.
Okay.
Maybe we can add that in just as an FYI. That'd be useful. Thank you.
Perfect. No problem. Thank you very much. We'll do that for you. There we are. Moving on to agenda item number 3, the big one. Here we go. So this is Scrutiny in a Day, Housing Associations Updates. Housing associations have been regular guests of the committee during my time as committee chair. Looking beyond the work of the council is important, and yet is too easy for scrutiny committees to be introspective. We've also not been afraid to try something new as a committee. Last year, that included undertaking Scrutiny in a Day, bringing together housing associations and council officers to consider how things might be improved for local people. We also heard from local residents and spent time in Feltham and Hanworth touring housing association accommodation and speaking with the housing association tenants. By the end of the day, we had 3 recommendations that were formally shared with our housing association partners. We called for better communication amongst housing professionals, better communications with local people, and greater focus on place. This evening, we want to understand what has happened since. We are joined by representatives of some of the largest housing associations in Hounslow, Surinder Baines and Maxine Gordon from Metropolitan Valley Housing. Thank you for being here tonight. Marie Felon from Richmond Housing. Thank you for being here tonight. Sharon Goddard from Peabody. Again, thank you very much for being here tonight. And we're just missing one, unfortunately, wasn't able to be here. I also see that we have Councillor Sue Sampson, Cabinet Member for Housing Management and Homelessness, and Modesta Uncha, Director of Housing with us. Welcome, everybody. I also have last-minute apology from Ross Kiklinski, representing Places for People, who is now unable to join us, but asked to keep abreast of developments. Members will have read the cover report and update appendix from Anne-Marie from Richmond Housing. For those who have brought along other material with you tonight, please use it to support your conversation, rather than cut into our finite discussion time by presenting to us. Given we have a number of organisations in the room and a whole raft of questions and queries from committee, we'll begin with introductions followed by the presentation from our housing partners, housing association partners. Who would like to begin?
I'm happy to, Councillor. Good afternoon, good evening even. It's light outside, it's lovely. So I'm Anne-Marie Fenlon, I'm from Richmond Housing Partnership, and I submitted our presentation, so hopefully all members have had a chance to have a look at it. In summary, we are a small community-connected housing association covering 4 boroughs, of which Hounslow is one of our largest, with upwards of 1,700 residents in around 900 homes. A vast proportion of that being on the Butts Farm estate. You will see that in my presentation I focused on that area, very much in line with kind of the principles of our Scrutiny in a Day session around communication and place. So we've done quite an extensive amount of work since many of you visited Butts Farm last year. You will see, and hopefully you're more than welcome to come and visit our community hub that has now been set up since December 2024. We are seeing increased footfall from our residents. In addition to that, on the Butts Farm estate, we actually acquired around 160 homes the latter end of last year, so around the same time actually as the community hub from L&Q. So now that consolidation of our presence on Butts Farm is very much there, and the confusion that some residents had over jurisdiction for us as housing associations and who was responsible for what on the estate is a lot clearer now. It's RHP along with yourselves as the council, and that's the key partnership. So I think that's very much improved things. I'm happy to take any questions. I don't intend to take you through the presentation any more than needs be.
No, thank you so much for that, Anne-Marie. Please, who else wants to go? Please. Yeah.
So I am the Managing Director of our Northwest region at Peabody. We are a large housing association. However, we have got what we consider quite a small number of homes in Hounslow, so it is one of our smaller boroughs. We have just over 600 social rented homes and another 400 homes, which is a collective of shared ownership and leasehold. Going following on from the 3 points that you said earlier, I just wanted to call a few things out in terms of better communications. So we have a really strong relationship with your development team. We meet quarterly with them, operations and development, mainly to talk about our forthcoming capital interchange project that will be delivered, but it does give us a good opportunity to hear what's going on in the borough, so that's great partnership working in that sense. Just wanted to say that we attended the Opportunity Hounslow conference, so that was development and operations colleagues that you held, another great event. We've got good working relationships one-to-one, so we consider strong relationships with social services, often carrying out joint home visits. What we don't seem to have is a forum in which we can share best practice with Hounslow or vice versa or other RPs. But in terms of casework, which is also what matters, residents, we have got strong links there. So keen to join any wider forums if you are organising any of that in the future. Better communications with local people. We're working really hard to gain more of a voice of our residents in the borough. So we have 1,000 engaged residents, but only 6 of them live within the borough. So we're working on those, on that at the moment. Greater focus on place was the last point. Like I said, we carry out a lot of joint visits with social services and attend MARACs and those sort of partnership working case by case is absolutely fine. But it'd be really good to be invited to any ward walkabouts or joint estate inspections with the local authority. I think we can both find that quite beneficial. In terms of any community issues that we've come across, we don't really have that at the moment. We've got sporadic pockets of fly tipping, but we don't have the large estates. So we have a lot of street properties, we have small cul-de-sacs, so they bring a different set of challenges to some of the other issues that other RPs may face, depending on how their homes are set up.
Thank you for that introduction, please.
Hi. So we're Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing Association. We're a pretty big national organisation, 58,000 homes. Hounslow, amongst that, is also very significant for us. We have 720-odd rented homes, mixture of flats and houses. Key areas being around, if I'm allowed to say, roads, Harris Road, Heston Grange, you may have heard. We've got properties in Feltham, etc., and Chiswick, actually. We also have a good portfolio of homeowners, leaseholders and shared owners of just over 500 homes. So just similar to others in terms of partnership working, we work very well in terms of multi-agency approaches towards safeguarding antisocial behaviour, but absolutely we would prefer to have a bit more of a formal platform in terms of how, housing association liaison meetings. And just to echo some of the other themes for us as well about waste collection services, I think there's potential there to collaborate. Although we've done some improvements on some of our estates with bin enclosures, etc., as a strategy for bin collection changed here in Hounslow to accommodate that. Other than that, in terms of our visibility with our residents, we take very seriously. So since last year, we introduced a new service model, which means that we've got a consolidated rented 10-year service managed by local housing managers. And equally, we've got a dedicated local housing manager for our home ownership estates as well. Since we last met, we also have a new, shouldn't forget this, Chief Executive Officer, Mel Barrett, who joined us in the summer, taking over from Geeta. So he's fairly new and very good. I think other than that, if I've forgotten anything, I think for estate inspections, similarly, we would like to see more collaboration and offer out joint visits with councillors on some of our key estates. And then finally, I just don't want to forget Heston Grange. So a lot of our community liaison has occurred over Heston Grange, which we're redeveloping, an estate over 200 homes and regenerating it. So over 150 homes, but regenerating to more homes, high quality spec and so on. So we're in the midst of talking to customers there around design arrangements, etc., before we go for planning. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Okay, so one of the things I just wanted to clarify, Richmond Housing did a actual presentation that was sent to the committee. It was something that we wanted from you. So if I could just mirror what Richmond Housing did, if you could send something to us with those bullet points, it doesn't have to be, straight away, but committee would love to sort of see that, and then we can of course present that to our residents as well and say, look, this is what your housing association has actually done. So that'd be quite nice. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we sort of now move into the discussion stage. So this is where committee members have sort of heard all your sort of introductions, and then we'll sort of start the discussion. But before we do that, I've got Modesta wants to come in. So here we go.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise the committee that the forum that was mentioned is something we are committed to setting up. So we actually have identified areas for collaboration with the registered providers, and as Carol mentioned, when we had the Opportunity Hounslow conference last year, we agreed sort of the terms of reference there and then. But unfortunately, the staff member that was supposed to be taking it forward left. We've recruited recently, and that forum will be launched before the summer. So it will have happened by the next time that you all come back here. Thank you.
Thank you for the update. Councillor Sampson, please.
So I just want to ask RHP a quick question. Thank you for your presentation. Just on page 26, you mention about increasing rough sleepers. Are you aware of StreetLink? Do you do the referrals? Everyone uses StreetLink? Yes. Okay, good. That's all. I just wanted to know that. Yeah. All right, brilliant, because then that feeds back to us as well. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Committee members. You both.
No.
Councillor Good, go for
Okay,
it.
thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for our presentation. It's again on the page 26 is mentioned that you're reducing the drug activities, but normally we notice a lot of people, they are complaining ASP or the drug dealings, unfortunately blind spots and hidden spots. So what steps you have taken to reduce these unfortunate complaints? A special, I was going to say, Watermill Way and the Beach Grove, there are a lot of complaint on their side.
Yes, so that's on our Butts Farm estate, and we are working with the ASB and community safety team here at Hounslow. So you'll notice in my presentation I talk about the new community hub that we've set up. Actually, at that opening, I met several of the ASB team, and we've agreed that they will attend monthly. So that is happening now at the hub. Increased footfall on that estate as a consequence of that, working with the safer neighbourhoods, set up with the police, etc. So I think the footfall will be better. What we've also done, actually, which sounds like quite a little thing, but actually does make a big difference, is in those areas that were the L&Q properties, there was an awful lot of overgrown shrubbery and overgrown heathland. If any of you know that area, it backs onto the A316, and it actually was a bit of a no-go area with quite a lot of drug paraphernalia. We've actually cleared that whole site now, so there is nowhere to kind of, sort of hide, if you like, and nowhere for kind of gatherings and illicit kind of undertakings, for want of a better word. So you should be hearing less on that. If you're not, then please do let us know.
So in reference to your communication, you mentioned on the page number 25, you have monthly basis pop in to the community.
Yes.
So it's going to be 14 days, I think, soon. So are you calculating or making a register somewhere if the people they complain, and how are you engaging more people, especially for the residents?
So even if we don't have the presence on site there, we've got our estate services team that's on all the time on Butts Farm. We've got 3 or 4 caretakers that are always around to be reporting. Equally, our office phone number and our website has all the facilities for being able to report anything. And we also have our housing team that work very closely with any particular residents who are experiencing antisocial behaviour at the time. They will be being supported through those cases as well.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Councillor Elmsley, then Councillor Mear, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Surinder, I thought you made some really good points about the importance of collaboration between the council and housing associations. I was really pleased to hear what you said, Modesta. Have all of these housing associations been involved in the creation of that forum today? I mean, did you guys all know that this was happening?
Max. I was at that conference that Modesta, and I was part of the workshops where we discussed key activities such as how we could work better in terms of ASB, like Anne-Marie's just said, and what that would look like, but also what that looks like for RPs such as Peabody that don't have homes that are backing onto other RPs, so or are not near the high street. So I definitely did work with, and it was agreed at the time to set up partnership working forums for all of us.
Yeah, I wasn't at that meeting, but I attended Scrutiny in a day last year, and that's where the initial conversation started, and we agreed that would be a great way to work together.
I would just like for information that the invitations are being sent to all housing providers within the borough.
Have all of them attended? Do we know?
No, not at the moment, no.
I'm not going to suggest that you name and shame, but are there any particularly big ones that perhaps we're worried about not engaging?
No, they're all happy to engage, but they were invited initially, but like we're starting in the summer, so we anticipate that everyone's got an invested interest in this, so we've got no reason why we expect them not to participate.
And then not to get too tactical, but Surinder, again, you mentioned specifically collaboration on waste collection, super important, especially in some of the houses in my ward. Is that something that's part of the terms of reference for the forum?
There's a lot of crossover, and that's one of them, and that's all on the table to be discussed on how we can work together better.
And I'm going to be cheeky and take a third, if that's okay. I know, sorry. Will councillors be involved in that? I love the idea of ward walks in housing associations as well, and we'd love to obviously collaborate as much as possible. So if there's a way of involving ward councillors in that forum, I'd love to. Right,
what we will be doing is what we already do now. What we're looking to do is what we already do now, and that's where you get invited to, like all councillors here get invited to the ward walks of the estate inspections within the borough that relate to the council properties, the estates and so forth. So we're looking to discuss having that same arrangement with the housing association. So again, so it's expanded, so because it works well.
Councillor Mear, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question probably for all the offices, housing offices here, association offices here. There's about 13,000 tenants and 50 housing association is providing the services in our borough. But we constantly get complaints of mold and dampness. How are you going to address those issues?
So do you want me?
Anyone can answer that, yeah.
So our organisation, we have got a dedicated budget set aside, just over £1 million, to tackle damp and condensation cases. So what we do is when there are requests made by our residents' customers, we do track them through. So initially a surveyor would go out and do their analysis and diagnostics, and then they will keep that case to resolution. So at each point agree at what points they're going to have a look to see what the review is, whether the intervention has worked or not. So it's quite dedicated, and we've got a special leaflet that's been designed as well to spot signs of mold, dampness, etc. So we've done some communication campaign as well, but we're very much tracking them and kind of addressing those issues as we find them.
Actually speaking from my own experience, I got a resident who has been complaining to his resident, housing association, several occasions, but nothing has been done. But I thank Sharon that you mentioned that we can invite you to our area forum. Is that something that we can invite any one of you, any of the association? That will be great help for the residents if they have any complaints, and they can share with you directly.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Councillor, yes, please.
Sorry, I wasn't at the Scrutiny in a Day last year. I wasn't a councillor at the time. Obviously, we've had a report from yourselves as to what's happened in the last year. I know that the Chair's asked for a report, but I was just wondering if you could just give like a general overview of what you took on board at the conference, well, at the overview, was it Scrutiny Day last year, sorry, and just give an update on what you've taken on board and what might have changed since then.
So I wasn't at Scrutiny today. I was at the conference in September. So the update that I gave was on the 3 points. So better communications with the housing professionals. So we, like I mentioned earlier, Houses are always very good with one-to-one contact for case management. So in terms of MARAC, or we have either of us have an issue with a resident or concern, the relationships are there to work through that case. What we wanted to do, and obviously the forum will help with that, is to do that on a larger scale, even looking at the borough holistically, and to see whether we're all facing the same challenges, whether it be damp and mould, whether it be antisocial behaviour, because I do think we all operate, and we in comparison to Peabody, like I said, it is a small collection of homes, but I think there's something really smart and clever that we can do moving forward, which hasn't been done yet, where we could utilise resources, not just share best practice and knowledge, but really come together. We work well as organisations, so we should really come together, because the benefit will be to the residents and to us. And then the better communications with local people. So, like I said, we do a lot within our own engaged residents. We need to get that up more. We only have 6 in our bank of 1,000 engaged residents. So we're doing a lot in terms of trying to reach the seldom voices, probably because of how our homes are. We don't necessarily have notice boards because they're street property. So there's quite a lot of work for us to do on that side. And again, in terms of home visits, my teams work really closely with social services. So this is where we're doing joint visits together. I think that's the start of what we should be doing moving forward on a bigger scale. But that's since the conference in October.
So, I attended Scrutiny in a Day last year. One of the first things that we did once we left that meeting was we shared details of the landlords of all of the properties in Hounslow, because we recognised that we all talked about our numbers, but we didn't necessarily have addresses. That was one of the first things that we did, which was really useful. So if there are any issues now that relate to another registered provider, we know who to contact. So that was one of the main things. In terms of how we've been working, we have concentrated our efforts this year on ensuring that we're carrying out regular estate inspections, and that's why we made that call out earlier in terms of making sure that councillors attend with us, and that we're trying to grow that in terms of residents attending with us so that we can have those walkarounds. But we're doing that on a monthly basis on most of our estates now. We've also embarked on home visits as well. So we're trying to get into our customers' homes or residents' homes to understand what their issues are, if there are any additional support needs, and equally looking at things like outstanding repairs, any early indications of damp and mould. That's something that we've embarked on as a pilot, but we're beginning to roll out this year as well. And I think, as Surinder has said, we continue to work in partnership with Hounslow team in terms of antisocial behaviour. We've got those connections, and they're working quite well for us. Is there anything else from Scrutiny?
Is that okay? Yeah.
That you're facing at the moment, such as antisocial behaviour, damp and mould, that's the sort of like complaints that we get regularly. And also, I was just going to ask, since you've been in Butts Farm, has antisocial behaviour gone down, or have you not noticed that as yet?
So I think for those of you who know Butts Farm estate, it's got pockets of areas that has definitely had more than others. It's quite a vast expanse. I think the measures that we've taken do appear to have made a difference. I think also having a visible presence with our community hub has also made us more approachable, if you like, and also the community safety team who join us on occasion at the office as well. In terms of cases, at the moment in Hounslow, we've only got, I say only, but 17 incidents of antisocial behaviour across our 800 units. So in comparison, that's relatively low, really, in comparison, I would say, to what most of us experience. So it's manageable, I would say, at the moment. And I just as a matter of interest, so I worked for RHP about 5 years ago for a very short period of time, and Butts Farm was one of the areas that I focused on when I was there for 3 or 4 months. The difference I have seen in the 5 years to the investment on that estate and the joint working that's gone on has been night and day, actually, in those 5 years. I was really pleased to see the improvement in the local environment and just how it felt going onto the estate. It felt safer. Yeah.
Councillor Sampson, do you want to come in, and then I'll take a question from Councillor Tack.
No, I just wanted to come in on the point that Councillor Mia said regarding the area forums. That is something that we've got on the agenda to discuss when we have our meetings. But I just got one question to ask the associations, if I may. And I'm just interested in how often you do your tenancy verification visits.
I would say not as often as we should. Typically, we tend to do tenancy audits. It's like almost like the target that we typically set. It's like 10% of our stock, but it's something that we recognise going forward that we have to do more of, because what we found is that whenever you carry out those home visits, the issues that come out of that are actually sometimes you wouldn't hear from those customers. So we're trying to, we're embarking on a programme of that now so that we can get into homes, be more proactive, and also not engage with our residents when it's a punitive action, when it's something that they've not done. We want to meet with them and have discussions about how we can support them, and that's something that we've just started on and we're looking forward to doing.
Sorry. Subletting cases, do you have many of those?
I've got none currently. In terms of tenancy fraud active cases, I haven't got any. In terms of what Maxine said, we're very similar in the sense of tenancy audits. We've got measures in place that would highlight cases of subletting, potential fraud, but we have also other measures, such as if a resident hasn't contacted us to report repair or check their rent in 12 months, it gets flagged to the neighbourhood manager. So we designed a local team. Yeah, so whilst, same as Maxine just said, we don't do the audits as often as we should, but there are other triggers that initiate at certain points for us to engage in conversation with residents.
If I can just add on that, Councillor, I think one of the things I've put in my presentation was a bit of a call out for some more joint working around tenancy fraud, actually. So I suspect we've got more than we think we have, and I think some more joint working would definitely aid freeing up, let's face it, freeing up homes that could go to people in need on your waiting list and on our management transfer list. So we'd definitely look to that being an initiative, perhaps one of our first initiatives as a forum, maybe. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you for that. And Councillor Tuck, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's an extension to Councillor Mia's question. Surinder mentioned a 1 million budget to address damp and mold. Whether the other associations set aside a similar budget, and if this 1 million is enough to address the issues.
So as a relatively smaller housing association to my learned colleagues, I would say our budget is not £1 million. However, we do have a budget, in all seriousness, we do have a budget set aside that is for damper mould cases. Reactive, but also looking at what we can do proactively. So ventilation, fans, etc. So all of those things that we're also putting into our planned programme. At the moment in Hounslow, just for interest, we have 46 live damper mould cases, so we are able to use our data. The other thing that the Housing Ombudsman Spotlight Report from 2021 asks us all to do is look at using our data so that we can be smarter with how we look at recurring cases and those sorts of things. So that's very much where the focus is at the moment, because the more that we do that's proactive, the less budgets any of us will need. And let's face it, budgets are tight all round, aren't they? So really looking to do things that are long-term sustainable. What we've been finding, I've been at RHP for 6 months, and one of the bits of data that we've looked at for damper mould is the seasonal recurrence of damper mould cases, that actually if we could do something more fundamental to the home, we would prevent that in the first place. So that's very much where the focus will be going forward for us.
Like Anne-Marie has just said, we're quite a large organisation, so we committed to £1 million a day on repairs, which includes damper mould. That's across all of our homes, over 100,000. But for us, we are in the process of doing a lot of work towards the introduction of our ABS law. So it's really important that damper mould is tackled in the right way, that the root cause of the damper mould, and that it's not a mould wash, that we actually get to the root cause of it. We have a special damper mould team with the triage service, but I'm happy to share when I send my presentation specifically on damper mould and the work that we're doing this year towards it.
Yeah, is that okay, Councillor Tuck? Yeah, okay. Just a question that popped up in my mind. Is there an education piece for all of you, for all the residents in all the housing association, or even in the council as well? Do we educate our residents?
In regard to damper mould?
Damper mould, yeah.
So I think there is definitely things that any of us could do in our homes to reduce condensation. But I think fundamentally, and what Arabs, the Arabic case taught us, is there are some things that are fundamentally about the structure of a property and things that we should be doing as a landlord. So yes, there is an education piece, if you like, but one of the things that I think has definitely been a wake-up call for us as a sector is the distinction between what used to be that kind of lifestyle narrative, which it feels very uncomfortable now when you look at some of the cases where actually it's fundamentally about the robustness of the home. I think one of the key areas, though, for me, which is a mix of all of that, is overcrowding and the contributory factor that overcrowding makes. There is a distinct correlation, I think, if any of us looked at our statistics and our data, between overcrowded homes and recurrence of damper mould. That is something that actually is about housing demand and housing stock, and isn't something we can solve on our own. I think that is a collective responsibility around, are we being smart enough about under-occupation? Could we be doing something Sharon mentioned earlier about being smarter about working together in a borough? Just because we're separate housing associations shouldn't mean that we kind of have, very sort of high walls around what we do. So I think, the overcrowding piece, I think, is more the focus than education for me on damper mould.
And that would be sort of conversations you'll have with Modesta and the team there, where you can have those, meaningful conversations on demand and what we require in the borough. And going forward with planning or whatever sort of building that we need to do in the borough. Yeah. Is there any other sort of question or concern or anything else with the committee? Any other questions popping up? No? Okay. So we've got a few recommendations going forward. So firstly, we really do welcome of all the work that you've done in the past year. It's really, really good. Again, I will say something like what Richmond did will be quite nice for the members to see exactly what's been done. So thank you for that. The development of the forum, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So we recommend that as well. So bringing both the HAs and LBH together. So we do look forward for that going live, and hopefully we get some good feedback from there as well. And engaging beyond housing with the wider LBH. So this is, of course, with sort of ward walks and recycling and so on. So just building on the current good practice that we got at the moment, but then just taking that one step forward with getting sort of councillors involved as well as our community team. Those are the three recommendations. Is there anything else that committee want to add to there? Are we all happy? Are we all agree to the recommendations? Brilliant. Okay, so that is all recommendations done. There we are. Well done. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for everybody. Dawn, Maxine, Sharon, Surinder, Anne-Marie. So thank you all for being here this evening. You can, of course, if you wish, you can stay and listen to all the other bits and pieces on the agenda. But again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
This is quite the reshuffle, Chair.
It is a bit, isn't it? Are we all good? Yeah, okay, brilliant. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 4 here, just as important. So transforming community experience, resident experience update here. As a committee, we have received frequent updates on the Council's One Hounslow Delivery Plan. Contained within this is a wealth of information detailing progress across multiple projects, programmes and portfolios. This evening we have a chance to focus on a particular element of our transformation programme. Resident experience is a core element of our Council's wider transforming community experience work. Tonight's paper sets out what has been achieved thus far and also details how the resident experience programme will demonstrate impact. This is important because the teams within the part of the council are frequently the first point of contact for Hounslow residents, whether online, over the phone, or in person, spanning technology, community, and place-based approaches. I'm sure the committee will be keen to delve deeper. Whilst the resident experience service is already up and running, we still have a chance this evening to shape the future direction rather than just comment on what has already happened. We are asked to note, really, the achievements of the resident experience programme delivered as part of the Transforming Community Experience programme to date, including key milestones reached during the design and implementation phase. Review the benefits that will be delivered during the delivery phase of the programme, including further digital transformation and community service enhancements. Consider the introduction of structured key performance indicators and performance metrics which will enable continuous service improvements, enhance digital access, and ensure data-driven decision-making to optimize service delivery and resident experience. The first recommendation, to note, isn't really the sort of recommendation we like, but we will, I'm sure, comment on what has been achieved through TCE and the Resident Experience Project, specifically before looking at the benefits the programme could bring and commenting on matrices. You propose to measure your effectiveness. Okay. I'd like to welcome our guests for this item. Joining us, we have Councillor Shiraj Giral, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure, Recycling and Transformation, and Councillor Ajmer Giral, Cabinet Member for Residents Support, Communities and Equalities. With them today, we also have Elliot Brooks, Director of Communities, and Matthew Maher, Assistant Director of Resident Experience and Locality. And of course, Mandy, yes, of course, we've got Mandy Skinner this. Thank you so much for joining us. Councillor Shiraj Giral, may I ask you to introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening to all. My name is Shiraj Giral, Councillor, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure, Recycling and Transformation. My portfolio also includes customer service. Councillor Ajmer Giral will also be speaking as the Cabinet Member for Resident Support, Communities and Equalities. Thank you for including this subject as part of your overview and scrutiny work plan and inviting us to come and speak to you. I'm really pleased to be able to bring to you a report on the resident experience and localities service. The service was put in place in last October, bringing together customer services, customer relations, community solutions, and libraries in one place. This is part of the Council's Transforming Community Experience program. This is a wide-ranging service of frontline officers who help support residents via the telephone, online through email, the council website and web chat, and in person at Hounslow House, community hubs and libraries. They are often the first port of call for our residents in need of help, information, support and advice. This evening we bring to the Overviews and Scrutiny Committee attention the achievements of this work to date and the key milestones reached in the design and implementation phase. We are now in the delivery phase. We are introducing key performance indicators and performances metrics which will enable continuous service improvements and enhanced digital access. We have improved digital and online telephone channels. This includes making it easier for residents to get the information they need via the interactive voice recognition system and making sure that if someone needs to speak to a real person on the telephone, they can do so. We have brought the responsibility of the council website into service. We can be more responsive and get more information online as soon as it is needed. The council website has been updated and refreshed, ready for a launch of the new site in the summer. There is a new web chat function for residents to use, which is proving really popular. Via web chat, the average wait time has been 22 seconds, compared to 2 minutes and 7 seconds over the telephone. The overall time it takes to deal with a resident inquiry has also been decreased, with the average inquiry taking 4 minutes and 22 seconds to complete, compared to 6 minutes over the phone. We have rolled out a number of services already with a further schedule. A new customer relationship management system is being introduced with a resident portal and a member portal to follow. These technologies serve as a single source of truth for all non-statutory service interactions across telephone, web, and face-to-face channels. The system enhances case management and service tracking, allowing staff to access residents' history and provide consistent, informed support. A key priority area for residents' experience in locality is customer complaints, recognizing that understanding and learning from feedback and complaints will help the council achieve its aim of delivering excellent resident-focused service. A new case management system, GovService, is being implemented to improve how complaints are managed. The system will make it easier for residents to raise issues and track responses. Now, thank Chair, I will hand over to Councillor Ajmer Garewal, who will provide an overview of how this has improved the in-person residents' experience. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I'm Councillor Ajmer Garewal, Cabinet Member for Resident Support, Communities and Equalities. Very pleased to be here today with Councillor Shivraj Garewal to speak to this report on how we are improving the experience of residents. The new Resident Experience and Localities Service is reshaping residents' interactions with the Council. So we're moving council services closer to where people live, whilst improving our digital online offer. Our community hubs function in local communities are key access points for support. This involves having our advisors within community hubs in all libraries, ensuring that face-to-face interactions remain an accessible option for residents who need additional assistance close to where they live. So bringing essential services closer to residents also involves improved coordination between council functions, NHS partners, and voluntary and community organisations in our community hubs. We are working together as one Hounslow with council teams and other partners. For example, the new Women's Health Hub, SheWise, in Feltham Community Hub and Library every Friday morning. This is not only improving resident experience, but meeting our commitments in our equality, diversity, and inclusion strategy to tackle inequalities. The rollout of our programme to make libraries into community hubs is underway, including here at Hounslow House, the community hub. As you've all seen, the new reception desk and digital screens, improved triage process, it's all helping to improve the residents' journey. There are now improved digital capability for community hub and library users. New credit card payments now available in all our libraries, and new platform is live. We've made key improvements for interaction through streamlined front door services, improving accessibility, efficiency, and services coordination. There is more to come, including closer joint working between community hubs and family hubs. The first joint hub was run in Brentford last month. I think that's about it. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. And of course, we've got Elliot Brooks and Matt Mayer here to help us along with that. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Okay, so we kind of moved to the clarification stage and getting those questions in. Well done to the team. I think is a fantastic amount of work that's gone in last couple of years, as this did come to overrule scrutiny a couple of years ago. So it's good to see that this is work in progress and done very well. So well done for that. I'll move on to questions. It's actually the first question I have. It's my question. Measures of success. How is this being developed across the entire service, given the breadth of service being brought together?
Thank you, Chair and councillors, for the opportunity to be here to answer questions on this report. So at Appendix 1 of the report, you've got a selection of key performance indicators which will be used to evaluate and test out that the measures are working. One of the key foundations about the improvements that we're making is ensuring that this is a sort of flexible and agile approach, and that we are taking lessons learnt as they happen, looking at trends, looking at intelligence, looking at data. So you'll see at Appendix 1, there's a range of performance indicators. Importantly, we've got a resident satisfaction score, which will be collected across online, both web chat and via online queries, emails, as well as via the telephone and in person. So at the moment, if you go into a council community hub or downstairs Hounslow House, your feedback is taken about your experience and how it could be improved. We've also got targets that are around calls answered, avoidable contacts, and excitingly, the Council's been introducing web chat services, which is cutting down, as Councillor Shivraj Garwal said, some of the time that is taken from point of inquiry to resolution. So by monitoring and ensuring that we are keeping on top of how this is working and making improvements as we go, we'll ensure that we can keep the service improving and improve resident outcomes. There is, in section 12.2 of the report, a section that talks about our KPIs, and it breaks it down there. You can see resident satisfaction, service quality, digital engagement and channel shift, our community hub performance, and our operational efficiency. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Just a follow on with that answer. Is this surveys? Are we looking at sort of NPS scores? Is this part of our KPI?
It's a wide range of different methods. So it includes exit surveys, it includes follow-up calls, very much sort of following our council's sort of early help and preventative approach. So contacting residents, finding out whether the solution has worked. We want to help our residents before they reach crisis point and need statutory intervention. So it's a wide range of methods. We're using new technologies to make sure that our calls are listened to and certain words can be picked up so that we're actually looking at what is coming in and what the trends are. It's very much work in progress. We're trying out new ways. The garden waste online sort of shift to helping people do online transactions when that's their preference isn't a good example. We really want to empower people and make sure as Councillor Ajma Garwal says, make sure our online offer is excellent so that people can interact with us in that way. If that is their preference, but then the in-person's offer is there for the most vulnerable. It might be that you want to fill out a form for this first time and you need some assistance, for example.
Thank you for that. Councillor Elmsley, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm going to be super cheeky and add a quick follow-up question to these before I get to my tea. I love a good KPI, and I've read through all of the ones in Appendix 1 and just had a look at 12.2 as well. I might be looking at the wrong thing. There are no targets. It's just the things that we're measuring. So the KPI in Appendix 1, it's average resident score satisfaction, but without saying what that actually should be. Is that a mistake, or what are the targets?
We haven't provided the targets in the appendix, Councillor. I mean, we can certainly provide that information to the committee should that be an ask. But to just give it an example. So in 2024, we had a wait time of 3 seconds 44 across the year. We would be looking with using new technology and the training of our staff and the channel shift to be improving on wait times, looking at how we can improve on the number of calls that are taken with more online support and web chat. So in 2023, we saw 214,698 calls, whereas in 2024, this was reduced to 198,438. So the providing opportunities for residents to access our services online, reducing the risk of failure demand and ensuring that residents can get answers in a more efficient way what's really behind our targets, ensuring the best possible resident experience through a range of channels.
Those numbers sound great, but there was no target. I guess is my point. I think whenever you start a process, you have to have a target number in mind. I think just saying we'll reduce the number of calls is great, but if we don't have a target, there's no measurable success. It's just a KPI that could do anything or be anything. Is that a fair comment? And if there are targets, we'd obviously love to see them.
There are targets for all the performance indicators, Councillor. They're just not in the appendix, but we can provide those.
Brilliant, awesome. Can we add that as a thing to
yes,
see?
Yes, yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Sorry, thank you. The reason I ask is because my two actual questions on the paper, sorry, Chair, are around targets. So section 4.7 of the report talks about lessons learned from complaints and continuous improvement. It talks about the progress that we've made in complaints handling since TC started in October, I think you said, Councillor Garrawell. But then if I look at the Q3 monitoring report, page 18, it's not in the agenda pack, but it was in the last cabinet pack. I just take housing as an example. The proportion of stage 1 complaints reported to the council that were completed within the Ombudsman's complaint handling time should be 100%, was actually 44%. The stage 2s should have been 100%, was actually 50%, that's provisional. When will we see that starting to change? Sorry, Elliot, I see you've got your hand up. You know where I'm going with this.
I do, because I know those figures quite well, actually. So obviously, Q3, and that was up to December. And we've been looking recently at some of the performance information, which is right now in the final quarter. And in particular, the two that you've just picked out, because they have been the, let's say, the poorest performing areas of the council in terms of complaint handling in the repairs, housing repairs. They're actually in the 70 and 80% since February. We made some sort of changes, both from a technology point of view that has been alluded to already in terms of the process, but also there have been some changes in staffing arrangements between the council and Qualo, making sure the right people are dealing with the right complaint. Where the failure has been or is perceived to have been, and it's made some immediate impact. So by the time the next performance report goes to the council's cabinet, there will be an increase in the performance, particularly in housing repairs.
But not hitting the target yet, but heading in the right direction.
I think monthly would have hit the target in February, but they're reported quarterly. So I think the quarter will be, the next goal will be January, February, March. So January didn't, February did, and we've come to the end, we'll be getting March's figures sort of very soon. So we're hopeful, but certainly a dramatic increase.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry, one quick point on that, because it is important. There was, for a period of time as well, a huge backlog of complaints that weren't making its way through the system. So they were always going to fail because they weren't being handled quickly. But that backlog has now gone. It's been removed. So that's really good news as well.
Brilliant. That is great news. And then the next section of the report is 4.8, and that is on KPIs and metrics. This isn't a question about targets, I promise, don't worry, but it's actually a question about how the data is collected, and you sort of alluded to that, Chair. I was looking again at the Q3 monitoring report, and particularly on page 9, it talks about, not page 9, sorry, page 17, it talks about contact centre satisfaction. And it said that there were 0 surveys actually taken by people who'd contacted the council through a contact centre in Q3. I guess my question is, if we're using that data to base our success on, what are we doing to ensure or encourage people who do contact the council actually do fill out those exit surveys? How are we improving the engagement there?
So the new technology that was mentioned by the councillors will enable us to do that in a much smarter way in terms of gathering that feedback. So the customer relationship management system, which is being implemented, the first stage of it this month. So that satisfaction data will start to come through. And will be reported on the council's performance management system, Pentana. In terms of encouraging residents to provide feedback, our staff have been retrained in terms of having open conversations with the residents, encouraging feedback, asking open questions, following what was the community solutions approach, which the council's been using for a number of years. We do actually find in person people are often very glad to be able to provide some feedback and making it not onerous. Asking it in a way that is helpful, not wasting people's time, really clearly focused, has how we've helped you today made a difference? If not, why? Clear questions asked to people, available in community languages. It's still very early days, and the service was implemented in October. There's a lot of new technology and systems that are being introduced. It hasn't been a sort of big bang change. There's a comprehensive program with changes that are being made along the way. So we're confident that we've got the right systems coming in to collect this information, and we're very confident this is the right way of going forwards.
And then just sticking on that topic really quickly on page 17
Very
as well.
quickly, please.
Very, very quickly, I promise. Again, this is the Q3 monitoring report. It says there is currently no target for the number of customers surveyed or number of customers satisfied. Has that changed since that report came out? Is there now a target for that? Because it would strike me as that's quite an obvious place where we should have a target for data collected.
We have targets for all of our indicators, but we're in a period of sort of systems change. So the way we are collecting things, this is a new set of indicators. The council wasn't working, didn't have these indicators before. So we can provide you with the information once those systems are in place. As I say, they're being put in place, and then you can have that full set of information.
Can I just interject? So obviously there's a lot here with KPIs and targets. Yes, once we've got the systems all up and running, can we just have even the first set of targets? That'd be brilliant to committee. At least we know systems up and running, and then we can kind of move forward to see what the future holds with targets. I've got to press on with time. Apologies for this. Councillor Mia, if you could just ask your question very, very quickly, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question for Mr. Garwell, Shivraj Garwell, not for my colleague. So the question is, we regularly get feedback from the resident who are not confident with technology, but face-to-face interaction they prepare. But now that you said that it is possible, which is very welcoming, how do we create the awareness within the residents about this opportunity?
Thank you, Councillor Junumia. The main aim of this whole program is that we want residents to get accustomed to the new technology, so it makes life easier for them. And if you've seen with experience that whatever we have achieved so far since October is that less and less people are interacting with the council through telephone. More people are interacting through the web chat or going online, and whatever their needs are, like if they want to apply for green bins, they're applying through line, even parking permits and so on, right? And now your question is people who are not accustomed to this technology. In the first instance, as a local councillor, you are the first target. You should be contacting your customers, residents, to help them and advising them. They can come to the council. We have got a customer desk here. They can come and we are there to help them.
We regularly get complaints that when they come to council, there's nobody there to help them. And even if they calls any numbers, nobody answers. It's the only way to reach by email. Nobody comes to us, they only complains. They don't come to us for that. So they're saying that, look, it will be nice to have face-to-face interaction, which we have been doing for many, many years. I know time has changed, but still there's the people who are newly in this country, or they're not familiar with the technology, they really struggle. So is there anything we can create for them so that they can have face-to-face interaction?
The facility is already there. It's through community hubs, as well as live every day. Anybody can come walk into Hounslow House, and we have people there to help them face-to-face. Oh, certainly. Why not?
Thank you.
We have that facility, and you should know that.
Councillor Giriwal, if you want to comment.
Sorry, if I can just add to that. As you've seen, downstairs has been transformed and people do walk in and there is a triage system so they know they're shown which department to go to and everything. But the community hubs, that's what they're there for. They're in their localities. They can go and seek and get advice there. And all our libraries have got, well, will have hubs in there, all of them. But there's a lot of help in libraries for people who are who are not computer literate. There's a lot of help there. They can teach them there. So there is a lot out there. They just need to find out, and they can find out through their community hubs.
Thing is saying the community hub is the best place to go for any information they need to get. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Yates, please.
So just following on with community hubs, I think they're one of the most important things that we offer. Actually going out in the community, speaking with our residents. Since they've started, have we had like more of an uptake with them, or more people attending these regularly?
Our community hubs are popular. We have had varying uptake depending on where they are. So our highest numbers have been at a community hub held at Cranford Community College. But also in the Cranford area, our Beavers hub it hasn't got the highest numbers, but Councillor Yates, as I know you'll appreciate, that it's often not just about the numbers, but it's about the quality of the conversation, and for somebody not to be passed from pillar to post and not to be waiting on the phone, and to be able to be helped in a holistic way. So by bringing partners from council teams and other organisations such as Job Centre Plus, Citizens Advice in one place where people can get the answers, we found that it's been very popular. We will be introducing a new community hub at Meadowbank, which will include the current adult education facility and our library later on this year, which we think will be really very important in an area where we think the in-person offer will be really well received. So to answer your question, really, in summary, our community hubs have been very popular, but depending on the area, the footfall goes up and down. Where we've had things like working with partners like Citizens Advice and Cross, like money advice courses or activities, working with the Holiday Activities Fund, we've found that numbers have gone up. It's also rather seasonal, so tying in with our Warm Spaces campaign, we've seen higher numbers.
Okay, thank you. I'm really keen to work with you on advertising this. So I'm thinking about putting something out in my ward in the next few weeks. So is it okay if I contact you to work with you on the comms on that?
Please do.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Okay, is there any other sort of questions, or are we moving on to recommendations here? So we've got a few here. So firstly, just acknowledge the work done, you know, all up to this point. So well done to you and your team, councillors, as well, of course. So we are going to be requesting targets. So once the system's all up and running, we do want some sort of target associated with KPIs or performance matrix. So we do want something. There must be something there. And just an update on the new CRM systems, or encouraging participation for the exit survey. And again, that will come with its own sort of targets and KPIs. So if we can just have that once all the systems up and running, that would be wonderful. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add on? Councillor Elmsey.
Can I just pick up on one thing? You said once the system's up and running. My understanding from Matthew's answer was that the targets are there already. We just didn't have them in the appendix. So could we just have them after the meeting? I don't know.
we can provide you with the targets, but we the systems are being introduced. So to populate the performance against the targets, the systems have to be in place.
I think just seeing the targets for now would be useful, just to know, because I think before you put a system in place, you obviously want targets to measure how the system's being successful. So take your point, we wouldn't see the population of data yet, but I think if the targets are there, we can see them.
Yep, so we will just add just targets as is as well. Yeah, so today, targets, if you could just give that to committee members, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Anything else from anyone else? No, that's it. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, councillors, for being here as well. Yeah, so that's Elliot, Matt there as well, Councillor Gilwales. You're more than welcome to sort of stay, but if you wish to leave, you can leave, of course. Thank you. Take care. No problem. Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so we move on to now agenda item number 5 here. This is the update on special educational needs and disability and alternate provision program and safety valve. Big thing here. So let's dive in. Our next item has been long time coming. When we began our work program in June of last year, we were certain we wanted to consider the performance and impact of council's special educational needs and disability SEND service. What was to be one of our first items this municipal year was moved to October to ensure the committee had the timeliest data. Weeks before we were due to meet, we had a confirmation that SEND area review inspection would take place from the 17th to the 25th of October. We deferred until later in the municipal year to ensure that the inspector's finding could be incorporated. Tonight is very much a case of third time lucky. I'm pleased we now have the item before us. SEND provision matters a great deal to those who receive it, and if we cast our mind back to the budget and the One Hounslow financial strategy, it also features as a significant area of council spend. It is an area of significant interest, not just locally but also nationally. Earlier this year, the Public Accounts Committee set out how across England SEND could work better for children and families and risks putting councils in an unattainable financial position. Hounslow was a slightly above the average number of children with EHCPs. The Public Accounts Committee data painted a positive picture of performance in Hounslow, with 94% of education, health and care plans in 2023 issued within 20 weeks, and a 1.8% of EHCP decisions taken under tribunal against England's average of 2.5%. Members of the committee will remember that SEND featured in the budget material we looked at in October and January. We read how the council had invested over 6 million to increase capacity and drive change, and how SEND featured in the proposals we reviewed in January. It is also an issue that cuts across organisations, and the SEND area review is very much in focus on the systems across the borough. Rather than any single organisation, members will have noted the suggestions contained within Ofsted and CQC SEND area review are directed to partnership leaders. I'm sure we'll investigate this further tonight. Our guest for this item is Philip Walker, Director of Lifelong Learning, Skills and Employment. Thank you for your time this evening. Councillor Samia Chowdhury, Cabinet Member of Education, Children's Skills and Employment, is unable to attend committee this evening and sends her apologies. And to that, I do have now Stephen Forbes. So again, thank you very much for being here. We are asked to review and scrutinise the progress of the SEND Alternative Provision Programme report. note the outcome of the Sen and AP Ofsted CQC inspection and a resultant Sen and AP strategy improvement plan published February 2025. I'll pass it to both of you, really, who wants to take it, but yeah, it's completely up to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for, I thought I was going to have to start with 3 apologies. You've taken 2 of those out for me. So one, repeating it again, apologies from Councillor Chowdhury that she's not available to join us this evening. Apologies for, I think we actually did want to bring this to you well back in September, October last year. And as you quite clearly said, we had our small inspection visit from Ofsted and CQC in October. So we would have to have reported that here anyway, so we made the decision with your approval to defer that and combine the 2 together. So that's the 2 apologies. The third apology I will always make is, and it is in a reflection sometimes for Philip and myself and colleagues, that when we get into the detail of the SENS system, it's incredibly wide and incredibly complex, and it's very difficult sometimes to distill that service and that system down into something that's easily understandable. And it is a system, like many of the things that we deal with, which is full of jargon. So what I would say is, as Philip and I are talking tonight, the jargon will come out. I do apologise. The acronyms will come out. I do apologise. Goodness sake, stop us dead in our tracks if we use anything like AP, which is alternative provision, because that's how we talk. So it will not help if we're using the jargon and you're not telling us to explain it, because it helps you, I think. So that's my final apology. Without an ado, what I would propose to do is I'll quickly just walk us through the key bits of the report, I think, putting some of it into context for you, and then Philip and I will be available in terms of any questions you have about the technicalities, the mechanisms, the outputs. So if I refer you to section 3 of the report, which is the background, and I think, again, as you said, Chair, this all kind of started for us about the area review in 2022, which was in February. We were one of the last local authorities in England, and certainly the last in London, to have the area review. They were not technically inspections with a rating. They were reviews by Ofsted in terms of how we were performing. The result of that was we had significant areas of weakness as an authority, 4 areas to address, and the requirements of the area review process was to develop a written statement of action, the WSA. That was to last for about an 18-month period, because in the old system of the area reviews, you then got a revisit about 18 months afterwards. But between the process of our area review and the end visit, they actually implemented the now statutory inspection process, which is joint between Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission. So we didn't get the revisit, we got a full inspection in terms of what happened last October. And that picked up on where we were at in terms of the conclusion of the written statement of action, and where we were in terms of the overall delivery of services against the inspection framework. And you'll see there's a link in there to the inspection report, and that will set out where we got to in terms of that. At the same time, and this is where it starts to get a little bit multi-layered and complex, because we were one of many local authorities, not the highest, which were running deficits against the high needs block, which is the part of the schools grant that comes to the local authority, we passport out, that we were invited into what was then the Department for Education's safety valve programme. They announced, was it 3 or 4 weeks ago, there'll be no more councils going into the safety valve programme. So we're technically in the last tranche. There were two tranches before us. And at that point, we were projecting over a 5-year period that if we were carrying on the way we were and the way our local system was working, that we would have accumulated a deficit of £73 million in 5 years' time. There is a specific arrangement for local authorities, and Jake will describe this better than I ever do, that allows us, in essence, to carry that deficit on the council's balance sheet. That exists until March next year, when government will have to determine what it does with that. But the aim of the safety valve programme is singular, as it was presented to us at the time, was to get to an arrangement, a legally binding arrangement between ourselves and the DFE, that we would achieve a balanced zero position on the budget. And in that, what comes is a requirement, in essence, of that for some additional investment from the local authority into dealing with the issues within the SENS system and any deficit there is, and a contribution from the DFE. So for us, our contribution from the DFE against our deficit is worth, over the 5-year period, about £27 million. Without that, then the lever that they had at the time and still do is that technically the Secretary of State for Education could at any time direct the local authority to clear the deficit off its balance sheet, which currently sits at about 12 million and will come down over the next 2 and a bit years because of the work of the Safety Valve programme, but we would not have wanted to have been in the position in 5 years' time where the deficit was running at the 73 million, because that would have put significant financial pressure against the authorities' overall position. So that's kind of the background. So when you hear us talking about the written statement of action, that's where we were. We've got the safety valve that started in the summer of 2022 and is a 5-year programme. And we've now had the inspection in terms of last October, and we will be re-inspected in 3 years' time, 2.5 years' time. So the strategic improvement plan that you've also got linked to and is published now on the website sets out what we're going to do moving on from the written statement of action and the ongoing safety valve plan to what we will be in a position in 2 and a bit years' time. So moving on to that, I would take you to section 3.9, which basically sets out the 3 drivers behind everything. Is matters of performance, how well we are delivering this as a system. And when I say system, it's the council, it's education, so that's schools, and it's also elements of the NHS, so primary care, the ICB in terms of being an NHS commissioner, and acute and community trusts. So it's a wide system that operates. The financial I've kind of touched on in terms of the position we're in, and the third bit there is structural, is how are we actually managing to deliver against national benchmarks, what's happening across England, the rate of children we have within certain pupil cohorts, etc., etc. So we weren't doing, for example, the best one I can give is we as a system were a high user of what's called independent non-maintained special provision, which is outside the borough. It's specialist schools that we place that are not under local authority control. They're generally free independent schools, and we were a high user, and we had a higher proportion of children in Hounslow in those provisions than comparative to the national average. So that was one of the things in our safety valve deal we had to sign up to, is that we would work with schools and the NHS to bring that down. And that's one of the programmes. So I'll take you through into the objectives of the Send an AP programme. So we kind of wrap this all up in the Send an AP programme, which is one of the One Hounslow transformation programmes. We set out, as you can see in table in 4.1, the objectives for that. What we've put in there to give you some sense of the journey travelled to date is a significant number of indicators and progress and delivery. And just to pick up, Councillor Emsley, where you were at, the measure here, the target for many of these, because these are actually things that happen for individual children, is it should happen fundamentally for all or most children. So the technical target is 100%. We'll never achieve 100% because there's bits, but a rough average is you'd be looking at some of them probably being in the 85 to 95% cohort. So in some of these, we've still got a fair journey to travel. Some are comparators. So like I said, the percentage of children with an EHCP in Hounslow against national is just a comparator. There is no target. It's just a comparator to where we are against the national position. So that table gives you a kind of a progress on the objectives of the programme. Table 5.1 is all the projects inside the programme. And I'll allow Philip probably after this to maybe talk a little bit about the mainstream inclusion partnerships, because that's one of the biggest cultural and system changes we've put in place with our schools about turning the way we deal with SEND locally around. So Philip can pick that up. Children's therapies was one of the 4 areas in the written statement of action that we were heavily criticised for with our NHS partners, and Philip and colleagues across in West London Trust that provide it. It used to be HRCH, but they're now part of West London Trust, doing significant work about reprofiling that provision. We've reprofiled a number of the provisions. So Marjorie Kinnan School, which is one of our special schools, we've kind of worked with them to reshape the pupil profile. So they are now stepping up, taking more complex children. Some of the less complex children that were going to Marjorie Kinnan are now being supported in SEND centres and mainstream schools. And that makes better use of that provision and stops us having to place children out of borough in high-cost, independent, non-maintained settings. So I won't go through all of those projects one by one, but there's a whole load of stuff that Philip can answer any questions on there. Fundamentally, this is about, one, the financial benefits, which is in 6.1, and linked to that 73 million pound projected deficit if we did nothing in essence 2 and a bit years. We're well on track. We've capped that now. We are where we said we would be in the safety valve plan in terms of our operating balances at the moment, and that 12 million deficit we're carrying at the moment. The payments come in every quarter from the safety valve deal. So the 27 million is paid in instalments, although we did get a little bit up front because it was, when we started, it was close to the end of the financial year, and I think they wanted to shift some of that money to us. But the requirement is we meet the conditions that we set down in the safety valve plan every quarter. We report every quarterly into DFE, we meet with them, and if they're satisfied, they make the next monthly instalment, which are about 1.4 million at a time, thereabouts. But ultimately, in terms of, there's a lot there in terms of financial benefits. The non-financial benefits is the improvement for children and young people and families. And I think it is fair to say that in 2020, 2021, take away the COVID bit, our system across the board was not in a good place. We've travelled quite a journey in some things. So, for example, I think we are still the highest performer in terms of assessments within 20 weeks in England.
We are, on average, about double the national rate, so we're certainly in the top quartile.
Yeah. And we've sustained that now for almost 18 months. The area that we're still weak on, because we've had to put the resource into that, and there was a decision that Philip and I made, is don't add to the pile, stop the backlog, so deal with the stuff coming in the front door. We're now having to turn the attention to the annual review process because we are not compliant there across the system. So we've got, but actually in looking at that, what that's dug up is an awful lot of system stuff that isn't anything to do with annual reviews, but to do with if parents or schools are struggling or unhappy with decisions, they're pressing the annual review button on a consistent basis. So we've actually got sometimes a flow of multiple annual review requests coming in. So we need to get faster and better with schools that lead the annual review process to improve that. So whilst I'm quite proud, I think that we've come a journey, we still have over the next 2 years a long journey to go to get some of that benefit. But certainly some of the feedback from parents and young people is showing that we are absolutely in the right direction. And at that point, I will cease and leave it to yourselves to raise any questions. And Philip, in terms of the technicalities and detail, more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Is there anything you want to add there, Philip, before we go to the questions?
I'm happy. Again, thank you for inviting me and the opportunity to speak to this paper. As Stephen outlined, it is a complex area of activity within which there are lots of professionals working extremely hard. I think I'd summarise our approach here in 2 parts. One is about getting better at administering the system directly and with partners, and some of our performance indicators show that we are doing that, but equally, like a game of whack-a-mole, just as you resolve one issue, there's another sort of presents. And secondly, it's about how do we tackle the demand in the system, which isn't abating. That despite all of our good efforts, despite the additional investment, we see demand continuing to rise as a proportion of our overall cohort. So, and not only is the sort of volume of demand continuing to rise, the acuity of need of children also is becoming greater, so more complex in their needs. So the second part of our work is about how do we build capacity and resilience into our school system. And that, again, that's a piece of work that we're set upon.
Thank you for that, Philip. If I can now go to questions from committee members. If I could start with Councillor Elmslie, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on EHC. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the report and for being here. Really comprehensive talk to that. I just want to pick up on EHC plans. So I think section 4.1 of the report talks about the number of EHC needs assessments completed within 20 weeks is consistently around 90%. But I went back, as with the previous report, to the Q3 monitoring report, on page 9 of that, it said that the number of EHC plans that were completed within 20 weeks is actually closer to 43% in Q3. Is there a reason for that discrepancy?
So there's a variance between quarterly and monthly performance, as I'm sure you appreciate. Q3 in last year was also the quarter in which the Ofsted inspection took place, and despite inspection supposedly not expecting to impact on the operation and on children and families, inevitably it took colleagues away from that operational capacity to focus on that process. So whilst that might not explain entirely that reduction in that period, it certainly was a contributing factor. A further contributing factor was a turnover in our staffing, which has been a feature of our system for some time and something we're set upon trying to address. So that was a period when we reduced down our reliance on agency staffing, which is proportionally expensive, whilst we brought in permanent staff, compounded by that timing of our Ofsted inspection.
Brilliant. And then just following on from that, just on the same topic of EHCPs, page 6 of the areas for improvement from that report did say that there was a lot of work to do to improve the timeliness and quality of some aspects of the strategy around EHC planning. I think specifically they called out, I've got it printed out here, significantly improving both the quality and timeliness of annual reviews and significantly increasing the timeliness of amended EHC plans. I guess my question is, I know it's in section 2.1 of the improvement plan, but what is being done to improve that and to meet that plan for improvement?
So yes, you're absolutely right. That was primarily a comment around our annual reviews and where we are performing poorly. I think that's the only way to describe it. So the first response is to better understand what is actually happening from a system and process perspective. That's when we discovered that we were both processing annual reviews and interim reviews as if they were one and the same thing. And the distinction is there's a statutory duty around annual reviews, and where we agree to amend those within 8 weeks. There is no such duty in relation to interim reviews where we've not agreed to undertake that review. But if you compound the two, where there's high volumes of interim and annual reviews, that dampens down our overall performance. So what we're doing at the moment is attempting to strip out the interim reviews as distinct from the annual reviews and reassessing our performance. That will still show us, I'm confident, that we are not performing where we need to. And we need to think about the balance of resource that's available in terms of the work that goes into completing new plans in a timely fashion, as opposed to the resource we put into completing annual reviews in a timely fashion. There's a further aspect to annual reviews, which goes back to about building capacity and resilience across our system. So it would be impossible without multiple additional investment in our staffing for the local authority to attend every annual review. And I'd argue it's not desirable either, because that's about primarily a dialogue between the school and the family and the young person as part of that process as well. So we have to work with our schools in terms of ensuring that they understand the importance of annual reviews, them being conducted as a quality interaction, but also the processing of those in terms of that information coming back to the local authority so that we can process them in a timely way. For clarity, that is not about blaming schools. It's about saying as a system, we've got to improve that performance. So there's the work we have to do as a local authority service and the work we do to support our schools in that process.
Can I just follow on? So will there be improvements this year? Would we see that in the next reporting, Q2 or Q3 or Q4 this year?
That's what we're absolutely determined to do. Whether you will see them in the 24-25 Q3 and Q4 data to be determined, but certainly going into 25-26, that is absolutely one of our operational priorities.
Okay. Can we have sort of a recommendation that we can want this information next year? So we can certainly add that as a recommendation. Yeah. Good. Okay. I'm going to sort of move it quite quickly to Councillor Gull, who wants to ask a question. Very quickly, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I really appreciate the Stephen give the report a very super fast way and make a summary. Thank you very much. I do understand this is a SEND or AP program is a part of our corporate plan. But do you have consider or make any steps after the people special give the public or private sector to encourage to give the internship and the work experience these sort of people, please? Have you taken any steps or take decisions to encourage the public and the private sector to give the internship, the work experience, a special, unfortunately, these people, please?
So the whole section in the SEND Code of Practice, which is a Bible of how a SEND system should work, 620 pages of statutory guidance, huge part of that is about preparing young people for adulthood. And it was one of the areas of weakness for us in terms of the 2022 review. So we've got a whole part of that in the system is about, because preparing for adulthood is not about continuing care. The vast majority of children who have a special educational need in an EHCP plan do not meet the threshold for adult social care. Very few do. Particularly if you take the SEMH cohorts, that's social, emotional and mental health needs, very few actually meet the threshold. So come the end of their SEND journey, which is somewhere between 21 to 25, depending on opportunity, aspiration, attainment, etc., they are coming into the community. They live in the community, but they come back into the community. And one of the things that we're seeking to turn around, and we had always, so you've heard me, I think, speak before about Project Search, which is one of our absolute golden gems that we really don't promote enough, and I try as many times as I can to promote it, where it takes young people who have an EHCP plan, aged above 18, into a year-long internship. And we've ran it here, and you sometimes will see those young people in the front part because they do a bit of a rotation at customer services and other places. We've had on average about 11 places, and we do that in partnership with, so the, I can't remember which hotel branch, Marriott. Marriott down at Twickenham used to be a partner for us. There are other partners who are employers. We ran a very small scale, 11 place every year. We made a commitment as we came out of the 22 area review to increase that, and we're now trying to get that up to 30 placements a year. The interesting thing, it's not for the absence of work experience placements, it's convincing parents that actually it's the right thing for their young person. That's where we sometimes really struggle, because there's an overwhelming desire for parents to protect their child. But their child is now 18 and is moving into adulthood. And actually what we see consistently, I meet those candidates on their first day here when they start their year, and you've got generally 11 or 15 very shy, very quiet, nervous individuals. And one of the fantastic things that I see when they walk about this building and they do rotations is just the overwhelming personal growth that comes for those individuals. And at every end of every year, we run a graduation. And these are youngsters with their job coaches that won't talk to me when I'm talking about coming to work, and it's different from being at school, and it's different from being with your friends, and you can't fall out with your work colleagues and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the graduation, every one of them takes the opportunity to stand up and talk about their experience. That is the personal growth. But the challenge is I would always welcome any employer that's willing to work with us to provide that kind of work placement. But right now, it's encouraging parents and young people themselves to see that as a good option, because they can work. I'm old enough to remember that children with Down syndrome were considered they would never work. You can look around society now and see people with Down syndrome being journalists, actors, models. In my lifetime, it's changed. So we need to push that agenda of change. It's absolutely critical.
Well, thank you for that. Councillor Yates.
Thank you very much for the report. I'm going to ask this question as a mum with a child with special educational needs. On behalf of friends and my residents, just a few questions. So one thing that's come up is that the concern is like a changing caseworker. So they've had their EHCP, which I think I've had no bad comments about that recently at all. EHCPs are being done, reviews are being done. But there's one particular case where the review had been done and the caseworker lost that and then it had to start all over again. So it's delaying things. So I'm just a bit concerned about the turnover of caseworkers and a lack of handover. Secondly, occupational therapists and speech and language therapists seem to be really short at the moment, and that's holding up EHCPs and people and children getting the therapists that they need. What's being done about that? And one final thing is the additional improvements in schools that what are being made. So I've been dealing with my son's school, who are trying their absolute best, but when I've gone to his caseworker to ask for further support, I'm told it's on the school. So I just want to know what extra support the schools are getting in order to keep children in mainstream schools.
Right, thank you. First of all, thank you for sharing your own experience, and I'm glad that the EHCP itself is of quality. We've done a lot of work to improve the quality of our plans. We're not there entirely, but a greater proportion of them are being audited and coming out as good or better. We do still have a challenge with older plans, and we're seeking to update those as quickly as possible, but it overlaps with the previous point around annual reviews and ensuring that we are processing those in a timely fashion. In relation to caseworkers, we share that concern, and it's something we're set upon addressing. So 18 months ago, when I started this role, 72% of the SEND service team were agency staff. And I wouldn't want to suggest that being an agency staff makes you a less committed individual, but it does mean that you can leave the organisation with a day's notice. And at that point, that was happening because the authority down the road would offer you more money. The sort of scarcity of people who were qualified and who wanted to work in the SEND system, because it's a challenging system to work in, was such that they could pick and choose where they worked. And we saw significant inflation in the pay that we had to offer in order to attract and retain staff. That situation's moved, so we recruited more full-time permanent staff. We've improved the professional proposition in terms of the salary we offer and also the training we provide, and ensuring there's a career pathway for people to stay here in Hounslow and to develop their career. That's in part, that's ongoing, but certainly Q3 last year was a point of transition. And we now have 40% reliance on agency staff. Still too high, but a movement in the right direction. So I recognise that point. There is improvement, some way to go, and ensuring there's that consistency of caseworker attached to children, families, and schools, actually, because we've also addressed that point where schools were experiencing a high turnover of caseworkers attached to their setting, is something that will continue. And we are currently consulting staff on a new structure for the lifelong learning department, and that will, again, hopefully, when fully applied, reduce down further our reliance on interim and agency staffing, so there's greater consistency. The third point I know was around school support. Perhaps you can remind me about the second one in a moment. But around school support, there's a lot of work going on to build capacity and resilience in the school's workforce. So one example of this is the AET, which is the autism charity, which is about training staff on their awareness and also their ability to support children with autism across the system. So we now have every school in Hounslow participating in that programme, and we're extending the programme to all early years settings as well, both private sector and school nurseries. And from this autumn, we'll be rolling out the LCLAN programme. LCLAN is a speech and language training programme. It's for children at all phases, so children up to young people in secondary school. And again, it's about equipping the schools workforce with the skills and knowledge to better support children with those needs, not at a specialist level, but at a sort of universal level. And that talks to, I think, the point you were making around speech and language and occupational therapists. There is a national shortage. It's particularly acute in London. And Stephen Will quotes that at any one time in West London, there are over 100 occupational therapy vacancies. And again, this is a big sort of drag anchor on our system, actually, and the improvements that we want to see. The NHS is seeking to respond, but they've got acute workforce challenges as well. So again, our response to that is about building capacity in schools through professional development, but also in our restructure that I referred to a moment ago, we will be building within the local authority a specialist practice and advice service and employing or seeking to employ those professions directly and deploying them as part of a multidisciplinary team with our educational psychologists, because that's a third profession I'd add to occupational and speech and language therapists, where there is an acute shortage of qualified staff and where there is a highly competitive labour market. So there's a long-term need to invest in those professions while we try to build capacity in the short term within schools.
Okay, thank you. So is it every primary and every secondary that is going to have the additional training and support in place in?
It is open and offered free of charge to every primary and every secondary, and it will be every early years setting as well. We can't mandate that they participate, but a majority do.
Thank you for that update. Councillor Mia, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question, Handlaw has the highest proportion of people receiving special education needs. What factors are actually contribute to this high rate, and what measure been taken to ensure these children receive the necessary help and support?
So, depending on which statistics you sort of...
I saw from the report where Handlaw has got 14.5%.
Yes.
And this, compared to London, is 12.7%.
Sorry, yes. So depending on which aspect of SEND you refer to, we are either at, below or above national average. But as a whole cohort, we recognise that children with additional and special needs is growing as a proportion of our overall population. So we are absolutely seeing that additional demand or pressure on schools to respond to meet need. So there are a number of things that we are doing, which are broadly outlined in the report, but I'll speak to some of the key ones. The first one is placing greater emphasis on early identification of need and response to that need. So we've introduced, as part of our Developing an Inclusive System project, the Mainstream Inclusion Partnership Programme. So this is where we are using funding from what's called the High Needs Block, so part of the school's budget, to distribute to schools where they have an individual or groups of children who do not have an education, health and care plan, but are potentially on that pathway. And by providing some additional resource, yes, in the form of additional funding, but sometimes in terms that can take the form of training, so training staff within the school to meet that need. The intent is that we are, first of all, meeting that child's need early so they can continue to access and progress in their education, but also then mitigating demand later on. And early evaluation, it's only been running for 2 years, but early evaluation showed that of over 400 children who were supported through mainstream inclusion partnerships, only 8 went on to actually have an education, health and care plan. Now, we need to see what that looks like over the medium and long term, but early signs are good. We're also investing, as I've referred to earlier, in school workforce in terms of how we build capacity in schools. to better identify and respond to the need that's presenting. That's really a catch-up program, because we know that demand, as I said earlier, continues to grow. So we're working at or seeking to work at pace to support teachers, but also teaching assistants. Also, a lot of this comes down to money. We know that, and I'm very clear in saying, you know, there's often the charge that there is no money. Actually, the Hounslow education system is a revenue system of over £400 million. So there is a lot of money going to Hounslow schools and early years settings. So it's about how do we use that money effectively, and how do we prioritise that money so that it's having most impact. So we are changing the way in which we distribute funding to schools, ensuring that we don't discriminate between in the distribution of funding between different settings. So we have a new model that assesses the child's need and the amount of funding that's attached to meet that need, and that amount of funding will follow that child irrespective of the setting they go to, whether it's a special school, a SEND centre, which is a specialist resource provision, or a mainstream school. So that means schools, particularly mainstream schools, are getting the resource they need in order to meet the needs of the child. That's a different point to saying there is enough money, of course.
So what sort of the training available for the teacher and staff for the mainstream schools for the special need children?
So first of all, it starts with our support to a network of professionals called SENCOs, Special Educational Needs Coordinators. These are senior colleagues that every school has, who are responsible for coordinating provision for children with additional and special needs. So we work with them as a network to ensure that they're aware of latest policy, of developments nationally and locally, and also so that they are sharing practice between themselves, so facilitating that professional networking and sharing of practice. I've referred earlier to the work that we are doing with the Autism Trust to train teachers and other staff in schools on their awareness and ability to respond to children with those needs. We're developing a program called LCLAN to support staff, again, similarly to identify and respond to needs around speech and language. And speech and language is probably one of the most common, if not a primary need, and then an additional need that we see children having, particularly in those earlier years and at primary stage. And we're also looking at how we support parents, actually, not just those in schools, with those skills. So early parenting support through a family hub program. That's also allowing us to identify children who might need support early, so closing that loop up back to early identification and response to need.
Okay.
Just to add to that. So you'll have all heard me at the area forums talking about readiness for school and turning that round. And as Philip said, there is a lot of money floats around the system, but some of it comes from preschool experience. So what we've seen in the past, because our culture has been one in the system of escalating up and out, so up into specialist, out of the borough, what we need to be doing is, as Philip said, is intervening earlier, because what we've seen is many children who it's actually very easily rectified expression, speech and language issues that have come from the experience at home or many other factors that if you intervene early enough, not with a heavy state presence, that actually you turn that round. But what we've been doing as a system has been, in essence, not identifying early enough, and actually those challenges for the child compound and get more complex and difficult, and in essence that starts the race to up and out. So what we need to do is get in earlier, and often it isn't a speech and language therapist that's needed, it's a family support worker who's been trained and supported by a speech and language therapist to help the child form the sounds and sounds of English. So we have an adult education, which has nothing to do with SEND, we have a Sounds of English programme for parents. If more parents were able to pick that up, we'd probably get in earlier for some of that stuff that would escalate to speech and language. So we're trying to stop doing that stuff and do that stuff a bit more. And that takes all of us to do that. It's not just a speech and language therapist or a specialist teacher. It's what we can all do as early as possible. But it's like the old classic, turning the oil tank around. It takes a bit of time to get there.
Thank you. Councillor Butt, please.
Thank you, Chair. How can schools provide better support to students, such as those autism and ADHD?
Okay, so one of the other ways in which we support schools, which also picks up on the previous questions and sort of adds, is to give them guidance on what's called ordinarily available provision. So the resources and the tools that they already have within school and how they might be adapted in order to meet the needs of children who are showing signs of needing additional support in response to a particular need. And that guidance has been updated recently and reissued to schools, and it's not just a matter of sending it out by an email. There's then training that follows so that schools are better placed. I use the reference to, I don't know if it's relevant, it's a fourth bridge exercise. Just as you never finish painting the fourth bridge, it's always going. And so that training will stop and then the next round will start again. But it's all about supporting teachers to improve their practice in response to the needs of children.
Thank you. It's just a last couple of sort of questions, I promise. So with regards to teachers or schools within London Borough of Hounslow, do all of them have the capacity, or are they all able to do EHCPs?
So we will, I think, rightly and reasonably referred to Hounslow as an inclusive education system. That's a commitment that I see in reality in schools that I visit every week. And that's despite the way in which the system is organised at a national level and the way in which the funding challenges schools sometimes to be able to respond. So I would say the sort of broad answer is yes, but there are certainly schools where we're providing more support so they can realise how they can meet the needs of children. Others are perhaps further down the road. But the new inspection framework that's being consulted upon at the moment will place even greater emphasis on inclusion, and inclusion as a measure of the performance of a school. So we'll be responding to that in how we support schools as well in the period ahead through our school improvement function.
And I think, in fairness to our schools, one of the big challenges we've got in Hounslow is the mobility of our population. So you'll hear me say it again, I've probably said it multiple times. In an average academic year, 5,000 children join our school roll. So not at the start of the academic year, throughout. Our school population is 47,000. So that's 1/10, 1 in every 10 children in a classroom in Hounslow. And it's not equally 1 in 10, it's across the borough in patches and different. But if you just see that, if you look in a classroom of 30, 3 of those children have joined possibly in the last 6 weeks, last 6 days. So they haven't been through the whole lesson learning plan. So, teachers spend an enormous amount of time planning lessons, planning those children. And many of those children, in terms of country of origin, don't experience education the way that we do it here. And English is also possibly a second language which they're learning. So adding all of that into the mix adds a significant challenge to our education and SEND system, because it's quite a high level of mobility. It's quite a high level of mobility.
Thank you. Just thank you, Steve. Just to pick up on that, Councillor Rice, if I may. So another feature of that mobility factor for us is that we see lots of younger children presenting at the point of admissions into statutory education at year R, so age 5, who have not been in contact with any public agency or attended any early years setting previously. So I think rightly we're placing that emphasis on early years, early intervention, early support. one of the features of our community, not uniquely, but I think it's particularly present here in Hounslow, are the high volume of children who present that we have not seen before in our system and who have fairly acute levels of need, often undiagnosed. Often they've had no or little experience of education in their home country before coming to our community. And the way in which our schools are responding to that cohort, I think really deserves acknowledgement and credit because our system has to catch up while the schools are seeking to respond.
No, thank you for that. No, I mean it's very, very difficult, and I'm sure the schools will, of course, always be doing their level best to support SEND. So, well done to all the schools. Is there any other question from the committee? It's just because I really do want to get this question out. We are talking about SEND children here. Transport is a big obstacle, I guess. Where are we with that progress?
So yeah, the headline, the situation is that in the last, I'm going to say decades, probably 9 years, we've almost doubled the amount we spend on home to school transport or travel assistance, to be more specific. And 2/3 of that, if not more, is determined by statutory obligations set nationally, over which we have no control. The area where we have a discretion is around 16 to 18-year-olds, so it's a very odd set of legislative sort of pieces where we're obliged in statute to provide transport for eligible children at school age. We're not obliged to provide any transport actually in law for 16 to 18-year-olds, and then we're obliged again for 19 plus. Now, obviously, we would always, well, it would be our officer's recommendation that we continue to provide some level of discretionary support for 16 to 18-year-olds, but effectively we do have little control over the legislation and the eligibility, in fact no control, for the majority of the cohort. So that comes down to how do we support more children to access education in their community. And that links back to the reprofiling project that was referred to in the document, where we support more schools to develop provision locally, meaning that we don't have to send children either across the whole borough or more costly out of borough.
I would add that, again, going back to what Philip said about the acuity and complexity of children, so we see far many more children now with large electric wheelchairs. We have far many more children who are physically active but have significant behaviour support needs. So 20 years ago, you will see them today. I passed 2 on the way into work today, our minibuses with children in them that are got special school names on the back. But actually, 10, 15 years ago, you'd have probably seen 6 or 7 children in one of those buses. We're now frequently having to transport significant numbers of children singularly on their own because of either just the size of the equipment they come with takes up 4 to 6 seating arrangements, or actually it's not safe for them and other children and staff to actually travel in more than one situation. And your average domestic car for a child that is either physically able and has significant support needs or isn't physically able and has the equipment, you're still talking about a sizable piece of kit. So the costs are not only about the level of demand, but the costs are actually about how you manage the transport in terms of what the level of complexity is. So we've just seen a proliferation of multiple routes because we've just got far more complex children.
Sorry, not to prolong, but just 2 things to add. I mentioned we've doubled the amount of spend on transport to nearly 12 million now. Actually, over that same period, we've only increased the number of children we're supporting by 20%. So the unit cost of transport has gone up, and there's an inflationary aspect to that, as well as the factors that Stephen is referring to. And also, in setting out that, we have little control over the majority of transport in terms of its being set at a national level, I'd want to balance that and say, actually, we also believe, though, more children could travel independently with support. And we are looking at how we invest in our independent travel training support
with children earlier, probably at the start of secondary, so that by the time they finish secondary, and certainly by post-16, they're capable of travelling independently. One of the key, I'm going to say, barriers, challenges there is about working with parents and convincing them that that is an option.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on to recommendations. Thank you for the reports and those sort of updates, both of you. It's wonderful. I mean, there's just so much work out there, and I'm sure you'll be coming back to a committee at some point again to see how that is all panning out. We do have a couple of recommendations. So encourage, ongoing focus on acting as a system, working well with our sort of partners there. So being positive. Just giving some sort of performance updates to OSC just to see your progress and how we are actually moving every year to a better system, so to speak. So I do appreciate, not KPR focused, but are we getting that right sort of system? And just passing, and I always will do this, just passing my thanks to both of you and your colleagues for the very, very impressive job that you guys do. So thank you so much for that. And ultimately what you're doing is you're improving children's lives. So thank you so much. And that is the end, unless somebody else wants to add any more recommendations. Thank you very much to both of you for being here. Thank you. Yes. No problem. Thank you. Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, so we move on to now. So agenda item number 6. So this is just updates from Scrutiny Panel's North West London Joint Health Overview Scrutiny Committee. May I welcome Councillor Sidhu to give her update, please.
Thank you. The Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel have met for the third time on Monday the 27th of January. This meeting involved us reflecting on the site visits as well as the stakeholder mapping exercise to outline and identify available support services and gaps across the borough. The panel recently met final time on Wednesday the 19th of March. At this meeting, Graham, the Head of Access of Education on Schools, Attendance and Engagement, tends in Hounslow and available sports, in addition to family hubs offering the terms to provide parents and care support across Hounslow, was presented by Jodie, the Family Hub Service. Finally, we workshopped recommendations designed to address the key lines of inquiries set in the terms of reference. I will be having a meeting with Stephen Forbes and Councillor Samia Chowdhury in the next couple of weeks to discuss recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gill, may you present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Being a chair of the Adult and the Care Scrutiny Panel, we have 4 meetings in a whole year. The last meeting was held on the 11th of March last month, where formally all the members approved the meeting of the last year's minute. And the meeting was focused on providing an overview of the work of the panels and a short presentation for developing good scrutiny recommendations and then developing recommendations for the municipal year. The following recommendation has been agreed by the panel and of course is in the process being submitted to the relevant directors for further comments. So far we agreed 4 recommendations. The panel calls for stronger reporting mechanisms to allow earlier identifications and resolution of contract-related issues. The panel is keen to ensure greater transparency in the contracting process. To achieve these contract decisions and performance review should be made public whatsoever feasible. And the second recommendation was also agreed. The panel encouraged to the council to deep engagement with the local community and volunteer groups to enhance the commissioning process. Improving communications and collaborations across stakeholders could lead to a more effective process and service improvement. A greater focus on joint working towards keep ensuring the best possible outcome of the residents. And the third recommendations, panels agreed, the recommendations continue to invest in care facilities to address the growing demand for support services. It is essential that residents have access to the high quality care in facilities and remain financially viable both for the individuals and the council. The investment should focus on long-term sustainability and the affordability. And the fourth and the last recommendation was agreed by the panel is the council continue to invest in early investment and prevention care to reduce long-term pressure to adult social care. Expanding community-based sports and promoting independent living could improve outcome while alleviating a demand on more intense services. So over the course of next meeting, the sporting officer will work on injunctions and the directors will finalize these recommendations and it will be passed on to the relevant key cabinet member and it will be discussed with me as well.
Thank you for your update. Councillor Nagra, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have the two updates, one for the Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee and one for Housing and Environment Scrutiny Panel. I would go to start first the Josh meeting update. The last Josh meeting took place on 13th of March 2025 at Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. The agenda included three discussions on: number one, the future Northwest London Plan elective care strategy; number two, the end update from the Northwest London ICS Chief Executive; number three, progress on the recommendations tracker. The substantive item focused on proposed changes to how elective care will be delivered across Northwest London. Multiple engagement events are currently underway across the region to gather residents' views and inform the strategy. Councillors raised questions about the proposed use of AI in the strategy and sought clarity on how it would be implemented. There were also discussions on how the strategy would address mental health needs and ensure equity in future iterations. The Chief Executive updates was relatively brief but highlighted key plans for Northwest London. Dr. Penny Dash was congratulated on her new role within NHS England, and it was noted that further updates will be provided to Josh regarding the potential impact of future funding cuts. The final meeting of the year is scheduled for the 1st May of 2025. Okay, I would like to give the updates about the Housing and Scrutiny. Housing and Environment Scrutiny Panel. The fourth meeting of the Housing and Environment Scrutiny Panel took place on Tuesday, 18th of March, where members formally approved the minutes of last year's final meeting on March 11, 2024. Members received an update on the work of Hounslow Highways in relation to flood resilience and posed questions to Tim Hurley, Divisional Director, who attended the meeting. The sporting officer delivered a presentation to the members which summarized the panel findings, and then discussion took place to develop recommendations. We just follow up the 7 recommendations in the panel were agreed upon. We have been submitted to the relevant directors and executive director for further comment. Number one, the panel recommends that LBH planning team should give greater consideration to sewer network misconnections and should require that new flood walls be built or existing flood walls be increased in height for waterside developments. Number two, the panel recommends that LBH planning team should encourage the use of permeable services for new developments and should ensure greater enforcement of the council's front garden policy. This should be embedded in the local plan. Number three, the panel recommends that LBH formalizes its relationships with organizations working on flood alleviation and mitigation issues in the borough to improve collaboration and coordination. This should particularly be the case when engaging with the Thames 2100 plan and its implications for the future use of Thames barrier. The panel recommends that LBH lead on the creation of an offer-led coordination group to enable cross-borough collaboration around policies relating to flood risk. The panel recommends also the LBH works with Hounslow Highways to improve maintenance and cleansing of surface drain covers, the surface gullies in the borough, increase the frequency and comprehensiveness of this maintenance and cleansing to address surface water flooding caused by blockages. The panel recommends that LBH lobby Thames Water to invest in improving existing infrastructure, including at Mogden sewage treatment works, and in extending new infrastructure to meet demand from new developments and to address sewer and surface water flooding issues. Last recommendations, the panel recommend the LBH lobby, the Canal and River Trust to address the decline in water quality in the Grand Union Canal due to the build-up of contaminated sediment and silt. Over the course of the next month, the sporting officer will work in conjunction with the relevant directors and executive director to finalize these recommendations before they are then submitted to the relevant lead members for the approval. The first meeting of the next year's Housing and Environment Scrutiny Panel will take place on June 18th, 2025. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all. As ever, great work there. So I'm sure if committee members want to sort of reach out to all of you, then we could do that separately. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7. So this is the forward plan. Do we have any recommendations? I think one was coming up as Hounslow strategy. Are we all happy with that? Are committee members happy with that? Yeah. So this is putting it into the next work programme. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So we'll do that. Now this ties in nicely with agenda item number 8. So this is the work programme. So we do need to make amendments to the work programme. So on the 7th, we'll then add. So 7th of May, we'll add the housing strategy, and we'll actually get some information. We'll actually have a bit of a report. So we'll have a good time to sort of get into the housing strategy, as long as everyone's happy with that. Brilliant. Thank you. Excellent. There we are. And agenda item number 9, urgent business. There isn't any urgent business unless any committee members have any urgent business. And then just very quickly to agenda item number 10, the date of the next meeting is the 7th of May. So this is sort of to close down the meeting for tonight. But we do have, of course, Scrutiny in a Day event on the 23rd. So book that in, make sure you're all available on there. It's going to be a wonderful day for Scrutiny in a Day event on the 23rd of April. And to that, I bring the meeting to a close. Thank you all.